Hey everyone, welcome back to the Art2Life podcast. Super excited to share my next guest with you today, someone who I've wanted to have on the podcast forever, and I finally tracked him down. My guest today is Adam Rosendahl. Adam is a facilitator, an amazing facilitator of art experiences. He's the founder of a company actually called Late Nite Art, and he brings people together from all different walks of life. He works with major corporations, different businesses, and using art, using music, and just amazing tools to connect people and help them drop in more into themselves, discover each other, and just build community. And he's an artist and also an amazing DJ, which is also really kind of extraordinary. And that's how I found out about him. I've been tracking his music, and you can listen to his music. We'll have links to his music and playlists on Spotify in the show notes. But Adam, I probably missed a bunch, but thanks so much for being here.
Right on. Thank you, Nick. Great to finally meet you.
Okay, so I feel like, we're doing similar things, or at least the thing that got me into working with other people so much were these workshops where basically I was just making art with friends and listening to music. And it's one of my favorite things to do. And it kind of grew from there. Art2Life kind of grew out of that. I've been doing workshops forever. So I'm so curious about how you got into this. And so I want to drop into a little bit about how you did that and then just talk about the magic that you're creating in these groups and maybe some of the ways that folks at home and people who are painting in their studios today or whatever can start using some of the tools that you do to help people bring them alive and connect.
Yeah, absolutely. So how it all got started? I think that the story for me and the thread of my life around using art in my work with groups started when I was 13. And my mom sent me up to an arts-based leadership camp on Whidbey Island off the coast of Seattle. And it was called The Power of Hope. And it was a unique experience because it was about 50 teenagers from many different cultures and walks of life with 25 adults who are all artists, activists, and educators. And many of the adults had an emphasis around a specific art form that they would teach us through these short workshops. But through freestyling and beatboxing and visual art and meditation and capoeira and all these things,
Huh.
it wasn't about getting good at each of the art forms. It was about building self-confidence, finding clarity in our voice, in our kind of vision, our purpose. And as a 13-year-old, I was identified as a leader, and I had all these sort of traits that people reflected back to me that I had never identified in myself. And it all happened through art. This kind of deep level connection that I had, especially with people who are very different from me. And the way that my mom described it when I came home is that I had a spiritual experience and that I wasn't able to find words to talk about what happened for me. Later, I would describe it
Huh.
as my heart was cracked open, but
Mm.
it really changed me. And I went back to that art camp every single year and really was involved for about 25 years. So that nonprofit organization kind of set the stage for me around, I'd always identified as an artist, but it kind of created a new form of art, which was using art as a tool to connect with other people or as
Mm.
a way to connect with people in a much deeper way. And so I came out of that experience and I looked around at my friends and my family and my relationships in my life. And I thought this, it wasn't shallow, but I saw how deep that you could go. And I had this desire to like form a much more diverse community in my life, and also to figure out how I can kind of increase the level of depth and meaningful connection that I had with the people in my life. So that was kind of the spark.
Wow, so young to have that experience. My
Yeah.
goodness.
I mean, and it kind of built over time, it
Yeah.
was 13 was the catalyst. And then, when I was 16, I realized I didn't really want to play video games anymore. And I wanted to like really dive into the arts and being more intentional with how I use my time. And then when I was, I guess, when I graduated college, I went and worked for that nonprofit, teaching art for high school students who had been expelled from public school. And so all of that was kind of just this thread of like getting more intentional with my time and how I could use art as a tool.
Yeah, I love that. And we do art because in different ways of thinking about art making, and what I love to think about it is it's a process of learning about who we are. But when you bring in others who are also making it, which is what you do, you leverage all those other people, so then you gain even more insight as to who you are and who you are becoming.
It's been an interesting journey for me around like how I orient towards being an artist and what is my creation or my kind of, what do I want to create in the world? Because I studied art in college. Like I said, I taught art at a high school in Seattle after I graduated, and I was pretty sure that I didn't want to be alone in the studio. That like part of the collaborative nature was, or the exchange of building with other people was a really big part of why I was interested in it, and the energy that came from that. So it sounds like you, like,
Yeah.
when I was in my college dorm room, getting people music, food, and getting people to create art together was, even at parties in high school, it's always been a thread that I've been like getting other people, figuring out ways to get other people to create together. But when I was in when I was teaching art at this high school, that was like where I guess the beginning of the thread of my business started, where I was realizing that most of the students in my class, just like most people in the world that I interact with, have like a almost paralyzing feeling of breaking the blank page, or
Yeah.
this is not my thing, and I'm not creative and not an artist. And so how can I like figure out a way to get an irresistible environment that gets people into that mode really easily, and they don't have such a strong inner critic or sense of judgment, and hiding behind sarcasm or just like kind of arms crossed. So I did that.
Yeah.
I did that with music. That was like the magical element. It was music, and also creating like an anonymous opportunity for people to draw and then move to a different part of the room and add to each other's ideas, and having this collaborative art form, which really, really changed people's feeling of like, this is mine, this is yours. And
Yes, that we're just
that
enjoying
was
the
the beginning.
experience.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was the beginning. Yeah, so that's kind of started when I was, whatever, 21, and I was, like I said, an AmeriCorps volunteer in Seattle and doing this with students. But that was the beginning.
So walk us through, and I know you guys listening, I mean, Adam goes all over the world. I mean, every time I look at your Instagram, you're in Greece, you're in Turkey, I mean, it's universal what you've tapped into, and I know the results you're getting, but maybe give us a kind of checklist, or what are the things? How do you? Because I'm challenged with this just in my own work, but also in teaching it. I mean, music is a powerful tool, but like, what is the thinking behind how you not only open people up, but have them open up in a group, which almost at first blush seems scarier.
Well, for me, I guess like the methodology has evolved over time. And like I said, it started in the classroom and then turned into more of a nightlife event, and then eventually got into organizations like governmental institutions. And then now it's mostly corporate team development that I do. And I do, like you mentioned, we do it in 15 different countries. And so
Wow.
it is universal, and it is incredible to watch the same tools work so beautifully in Turkey and Mexico and Iceland
Wow.
as in the US. So there is something about the energy of a group that just changes people's orientation towards art making. Well, often I'm hired in the context of our teams are siloed and disconnected, or we have a change in leadership, or we have some kind of big shift in an organization, and they want to do a cultural reset, something that kind of helps
Mm.
people connect back to the values of the organization, or helps them feel more connected to each other. And so that's what I'm often brought into organizations to do. And I think being in a group environment, it creates energy, so there's a lot of different like bobbing heads when the music is going, and they walk in and they're able to kind of build off each other. When one person shares in front of a room, and they drop into a level of vulnerability, or that feels a little bit more of a like, wow, that was a risky thing to share in front of everyone, like the entire room, you could feel that dropping down. And so
Yeah.
when you have a big group, it kind of it amplifies. So it's not necessarily better or worse to have 10 people versus 500 people, but it does create a very different energy. And what I've come to do in my work is that so much of it happens in partners or groups of 3, so that even if we're in a group of 500 or 300 people, it still has a feeling of being intimate.
Yeah. I love, and I've watched some YouTube and different things, and I love, and it's something I am always on the search for, a really good questions that can lead people into places. And I know, I think maybe it was on a TED talk you gave, but it was something around a personal, you know, positive. I can't actually remember the question. I think it was a something that they were really excited about that they had achieved. That
Yeah.
that puts everybody in such a good place to be thinking about something that they've overcome or something that they've accomplished, and to share that is quite vulnerable. We usually don't share these wins of ours, but to share that, then it connects everyone, and it's so important to just kind of get that ball rolling. And so you have some great questions. I was curious about what are some of your good questions you use.
Yeah. I mean, the main ingredients with what I do, I realized this a while ago, that some of the main threads of my life were art, music, and facilitation. Those are the 3. And so within facilitation, I think asking good questions, or, just being curious about the layers of the human in front of you, is a really important aspect. And so one question that I've gotten really fond of and I use very consistently is, what are you celebrating in your life?
That was it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love
And
that.
so, I mean, 2 days ago, I was in Kansas City, Missouri, and I was working with 168 architects and interior designers. And we asked, and it's 15 offices coming together. A lot of people have never met each other. There's different levels of leadership in the room. So it's a vulnerable thing to share out in front of your entire company.
Yeah.
Um, and I asked, what are you celebrating? And one woman stood up and she said, and she clearly has gone through chemo. And she said, yeah, I'm celebrating 4 years of being cancer free,
Mhm.
and she had a standing ovation. And like, this is
Oh.
within like the first 5 minutes of the workshop. And it
Yeah.
was just, they didn't stop clapping. You saw her just sitting there,
Oh.
taking it in, being witness, like how brave to share that. Um, and just like how that allows people to connect with her. And then right after that, a man stood up and he said, we just, I'm celebrating that I'm about to have 2 twin granddaughters. And he's like, it's very significant because my daughter lost the first one, and so
Yeah.
then people are just like
Yeah.
celebrating this
Yeah.
this man. And you're like, whether he works in marketing or, sales, or, it's like they have a completely different orientation to him now. And so this is, I've found to be part of it, is creating this space where people feel safe or comfortable enough to share these things. But when they do, you could feel the whole room dropping into a different level. And that also really informs the artwork that gets created afterward.
Absolutely.
And it's a very nuanced thing, right? Because it's not group therapy and it's not about like, let's go super deep. And so a big part of what I'm doing is creating an uplifting environment where this is going to be fun. This is going to be interactive. This is not like another like kind of BS team building thing where people have this long sigh, and people have a really strong resistance and trigger towards like, let's share our emotions in front of
Yeah.
our teammates. And so
Yeah.
I'm pushing through a lot of that resistance, and there's a lot of kind of projections around what this is going to be. um and so that's an interesting thing of like, how is it that what I do feels so different, and I think it is the spectrum of play and depth together, and consistently shifting the energy so it doesn't feel so deep or heavy or forced,
Yeah.
but it really feels like people are opting in and they get to share of their own free will. And when they do, it feels very special because it's not like I'm pushing it.
Yeah. And what I think what's challenging that you do so well, I mean, you're having him do a thing and call it art, but there's a lot of, as you know, terror around that white piece of paper, and redefining it as play or how do you move them into being free in in what often is a thing that many people don't feel qualified to participate in, how do you do that?
Yeah. I mean, they walk into, like last week, for example, 168 designers, interior designers, and architects. They walk into a room and there's these long parallel tables that are covered in a roll of watercolor paper. And there's watercolors, brushes, flower bouquets. I have these Swiss wax pastels, and then some nice colored pencils. And they're all designed in this like beautiful aesthetic way that it feels very intentional. And so one of the things I say early on is that this is not an art workshop. I'm not teaching you how to draw pretty pictures. And the art is specifically here as a tool to help you all build deeper relationships with one another and to lean into collaborating across different departments. So I'm using this strategically to get you out of your head, to shift into a different way of communicating and listening with each other. And you might be surprised around what comes up here. So it's, whether you are walking into the room and you feel excited about playing with a brush, or there's many people, pretty much every single workshop, that say, I haven't touched art supplies since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Great. It doesn't matter to me like what your experience level is. It's just there is a really important aspect of the process of letting go of your critical mind and the kind of what I called like your little hater that just shuts you down.
Yeah.
And it's this playful thing that I get people to kind of like throw out their critical voice, and they yell the word free.
Oh, that's good. So
So
that's how you,
they really
wow.
visualize like, the sarcastic like criticism, even like in like tiny ways that they cut themselves down.
Yeah.
And I get them to like identify that in a place in their body, they pull it out, and then on the count of three they all throw it out of the room, they yell the word free. And yeah,
Wow, dude, that's awesome.
there's a
Like
physical shift.
literally exercise that gremlin,
Yeah.
throw. Oh,
Yeah.
that's really good. And
And there's a
they have to use their voice, which is also helpful. Just yell,
Yeah, and there's a big shift in the room. And I said with this group in the Midwest a couple of days ago in Kansas City, it was like, I know that you think this is bullshit, but like just keep going with me. So there is a lot of resistance that I'm pushing through, because it's easy to just be the cool kid and like with the arms crossed and be like, oh, I'm not going to do this
Yeah.
like funny arts thing. And so um yeah, in some ways there's like pretty big transition or transformation that happens.
One thing I notice in your setup in the room, and you guys will have to go check out, go to art2life.com podcast and have a look at those photos because it is so inviting. I mean, I've gotten a lot of questions. I've raised my kids and they're pretty creative. But what we always did is we always had the sharpened colored Prismacolor pencils and the ream of white paper on the kitchen table. And I think that invitation, just having the invitation there to play with all those colors, that's what that's something that gets kids going, and they just are always like waiting for dinner and they're coloring and they're just doing art as part of their day. But when I saw the way you set up the tables, it reminded me of that. It's just this yummy invitation, and there's an intentionality about it. But I also noticed, which got my wheels spinning around how I do workshops, which is a little different, but because like everyone has their own table, but what you do is the tables are fairly narrow and people are across from one another, so it facilitates this, you know cross indexing right from the get start. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like a really important part of my process is that everyone has a partner across from them. And so it creates a really easy dynamic to have groups of twos, threes, or fours. And after each prompt, I have everyone share, and then they move one chair to the right. So it's a pretty tightly facilitated process, but it's broken up into these segments of, sometimes it'll be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes for what I call a prompt, and they're
Ah,
with that one partner throughout that whole experience. And when they shift to a new seat, the music turns on, and there's this kind of like emptying the cup of like whatever just happened, whether it was
I
powerful
love
or
that. Yeah.
emotional or like frustrating and weird, or they had a partner who was really disengaged or whatever it was. When they shift to the new seat and the music turns on and they have a new partner and there's a new question, it allows them to have, it's a kind of like flipping to a blank page each time.
What's oh, that's so brilliant that you move the people around, and then because the table is the art place, it's all, is that right? Like no one's working on a piece of paper. It's all the tabletop is the art.
Yeah. And so the table is, it encompasses the stories and the marks of everyone on the team or everyone in the room. And so it becomes everyone is building off each other's ideas. So this anonymous, collaborative
Yeah.
kind of thing that's happening, letting go of what's mine, what's yours. And it also allows people to be a bit more free because they know that they're going to leave. They don't need to like have ownership for that piece.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
it creates like an anonymous way of being able to kind of like just be more playful with what's in front of them.
Yeah. How do you talk about the being in your head and not being in your head? How do you kind of explain that, the intellect and the intuition, or like what do you, I'm just curious because it's something that I'm always talking about, but I'm sure that you have some good ways of communicating this because you're doing that, right? You're trying to get them more embodied and
Yeah. I mean, I talk about that language of out of the head and into the heart, or into the body. And I identify as a head type. So I think that, for me, that means like constantly brainstorming possible ways that life can go. It can also lead to like anxiety, rumination, fear. Like it's just like getting
yeah,
stuck in like mental cycles.
yeah,
And I know a lot of work happens through talking, listening, brainstorming on Zoom in meetings. And it's very head focused. And so I think like one of the many incredible things about art is in some ways, especially with music, it can drop people into a different space out of the
yeah,
head. And so a huge part of what I'm doing right from the beginning is trying to get people into a different zone, letting go of the meetings and the emails and all the things that they have kind of
yeah,
like that are never ending. And so one of the first questions that I have people do is having a visual conversation with the person across from them. So one person makes a mark, the other person builds off of it, and they go back and forth as if they're having a conversation, but with the watercolors and without words. So I invite silence in the room and then I turn the music up really loud. So they're in this immersive environment, building off each other's ideas.
wow,
And the reflection that I get is like after 3 minutes, people feel calmer, they feel more at ease, they feel connected. There's all these kind of emotional shifts and changes that happen in a really short period of time. And I think it's a good example of getting out of the head.
yeah. Isn't it cool that we're, as humans, we're hardwired this way, and that you're sharing something with a vast majority of the people that you're turning them on to this process, like everyone can be shifted, everybody can drop in to a deeper part of themselves, and they're like, whoa, here I am, like, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, especially when I'm working with like high school students in Guadalajara, Mexico, and then I'm working with like executives, from in Lisbon, Portugal, or I was
Wow.
with like inmates in Iceland, and then it was just like,
Oh,
so when you work with such a wide spectrum of people, and then you realize that there's certain things like music and art together in a really like beautifully
mm,
facilitated way that can drop people into a certain space, no matter what language they speak, that starts to be like the universal quality of this is
I
very,
love it.
very powerful when we
Oh,
think about human behavior and human beings and like the arts
yeah.
and our kind of like our connection to that.
Yeah, yeah, using, and that we're these super feeling beings. We're all hardwired for that. We're just soaking up. We can hear music and it can shift the way we think about everything. And I love that. I one of the practices that I do and I work with some of my students on is kind of just starting the day by doing a daily page, just does not planned. And it's amazing how you feel afterwards. Yeah, I don't know what is going on, but I can have a million things to do, and then I'm just okay. Before I get going, I'm just going to take a page in this book, and I'm just going to take 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and just start with these materials. And I mean, it is just such a different orientation how I come out of that and what I think is possible and how I view the problems and the things I was going to take on. Do you know what I mean? It's like I don't even know what's going on, but it is the thing that I use to stay excited and really not overwhelmed. There's something about it that it reduces overwhelm for me. It's just if I can feel this way, then it makes a lot of things possible for me. Does that relate?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think I have a little book. It's called 365 Days of Drawing, and it's been like, it has a prompt, and it's just like the invitation is to do a short drawing every single day. And I have been doing that. I kind of fell off, and I'm speaking to you right now makes me want to get back on board of that, like, anchor.
Yeah.
Some people do meditation, some people do breath work, but like having that like small drawing practice that, like, with all the research shows, it's like
Yeah.
when you drop into that space, it actually is good for mental health. It's good for
Yeah. Yeah.
or your nervous system to shift out of the kind of like the jittery like
Yeah.
space of social media and like too many emails to like
What
being a
it what it does for me and and I think is helpful for artists who are building their careers and they have shows and they're trying to push this stuff out in the world. And it's so easy, as you said, to be in your head around it. Like, I got to get to the studio. I didn't, and I have to do this and I have to do that. And what is this? How is this piece of art going to turn out? And will it? And all that stuff that has nothing to do with art making at all. And I think this little drawing or this little drop in allows you to reconnect with that's the headspace that allows it to all be possible. And for me, it's just this reminder, really, that, oh yeah, oh yeah, I got this because this is just naturally what I do. And it's so easy. And I love being in that. And I've won the game if I get to be in this more in my life. Forget about anything. And the best art comes out of this space. These little prompts. I can't believe you made a book already about that. That's so cool. You actually took 100, did you say 100 days?
It's not my book. Yeah.
Oh,
No, but I mean, the basic practice is just having a short prompt that allows, I don't need to think, and I can create a quick drawing,
yeah,
like
yeah,
similar to you.
yeah,
That's without getting too in my head about it. And
yeah.
that's a big part of late night art, I think, is when it's guided by someone else, like when I'm facilitating other people and they don't need to think about what they're going to draw, and they can just they know it's going to be time bound, it's 3 minutes, and then they're going to leave. It just creates a lot more expansive freedom in what they create. So I think that, yeah, even professional artists, when I have them come into, I've had a lot of professional artists that have been guests in my workshops, and they have a really hard time with letting go of control and letting other
Ah,
people
right.
draw on top of their drawings and not holding things too preciously. And
Interesting.
it is very interesting.
If the idea is in our art careers to like make stronger and stronger work and work that's more personal, I have found, and I coach people around this, that when we're in that like non-thinking space, that's when all this good stuff is made. Like it does generate. And I was curious in that maybe you've seen like someone, CEO of a bank is doing something, and then all of a sudden they get on this and they discover things. I mean, I know that that's not the intention, but have you had things happen for people that it's led them into a new career or a new hobby or a revelation around what they want to do, because your soul is open a little bit when you're not thinking, and things come through. And I mean, you work with so many people. I can imagine, people are following up with you. And do you have any stories of that kind of impact?
A big part of what we're doing often is we're helping get people into the space of being in a creative brainstorm possibility, what's coming for
Yeah.
2023. And then so they bring us in, and then afterwards they go into like sales strategy and like setting their goals for the
Oh,
year and stuff like that. But I have definitely had people who've come to me years later who have left their jobs, are pursuing different,
yeah.
different things, and kind of credit part of what happened in this session with me as like a connection to self, or a connection to like a,
Mm-hmm.
a deeper part of their like who they really are.
Mm-hmm.
I've also had people who have they've built incredible relationships with people in the room, friends, businesses have been started. I know some people have met people who got married, actually.
Oh, that's cool.
Like I realize there's an incredible possibility in an hour and a half of what can happen. And so to really not like be like, oh, it's only an hour and a half, it's only 90 minutes. It's like,
Wow.
it's actually could be a catalyst for people that really
Yeah.
changes some aspect of their personal and professional journey. And I ask people to hold that possibility, when we're together, that the people that you work with or that you're collaborating with could become a new friend, mentor, collaborator,
Yeah.
teacher, that this could
Yeah.
have
It's
a
like
serious
this could
impact.
be, you fill it with wonder and curiosity, which is where you want to be all the time. But that is such a cool invitation.
Yeah. Yeah, I really believe that now. I mean, because I've seen somewhat of miracles happen in a pretty short period of time.
Now, I'm curious, your art is this, right? I mean, do you sometimes want to like what other aspects of art making are you doing, or is this just it? Like, do sometimes you just want to like be by yourself and make art? I mean, that's the opposite of what you're doing, but I would think that that would be refreshing. And I'm just curious where you are and just what you're doing and what maybe you're thinking of doing that's exciting for you personally, or this maybe does it all.
Yeah. I mean, I've been drawing portraits since I was a kid. You know, it's always been something that I doodle and I draw as I listen to people on phone calls and things like that. But portraits were really been like the main highlight. And so one thing I've been doing is doing a portrait of somebody who I feel is really inspiring me right now in this field that I'm in, around connection, culture, organizational culture, and creativity. And I do a portrait every single month of one person, and then I write notes around them, highlighting their
Yes.
key ideas, and I call those illuminated notes. And so, um, a dear friend and colleague who's in many ways has been like my art mentor for the last 10 years. His name is Forrest Stearns, and
Huh.
his company is called Draw Everywhere. And so we it's not official, but we sort of have a side business which is called Illuminated Notes. And occasionally we go to conferences, we go to different events, and people confuse it with graphic recording. But what we do, we describe it as we draw portraits of the keynote speakers or of the people that are presenting, and then we illuminate their ideas using different fonts and colors, and we create these visuals that when you look at it, you can get a sense of the spirit of the person. And then you also are able to take away some of their ideas. And so that's been like a really powerful practice. I do that once a month just for my own newsletter. I put out like a drawing and a playlist every month. But then I also get brought into organizations like the Google School for Leaders, and I am doing portraits of folks who are graduating from their leadership development program, and then that's gifted to them as like an artifact
Wow.
at the end of their program. So I'm working with organizations as well to do these portraits that really help people feel seen.
Oh,
And
I
and I
love
think
it.
that the thread of that to my work is that I love using art as a way to make people feel seen. And so
Yeah.
sometimes people look at these notes and they start crying, like because they feel like, even if they're speaking in front of a room of 5,000 people and they have all of these lineup of people trying to talk to them after a talk, like seeing the notes and seeing their portrait, it has a different effect.
Oh
Like
yeah.
you're really listening.
Yes, yes. That is so beautiful. God, that's just great. What a great contribution to an event. And then because of all the, I mean, it's got all the thinking, all that person's thinking and their ideas, and you get to highlight it, but you're curating it. So that just sounds fun to me. You haven't confined yourself. You just get to expound. And if an idea is really resonates for you, you can make it bigger or whatever.
And I mean, I think there's still a lot of room for me to connect to my little Adam artists and be like kind of wild and playful and colorful and dirty with, get my hands dirty. Like I invite more of that into my life. And I think that happens more when I'm doing art with kids. Um,
Oh, yeah.
and that's been like a nice kind of doorway for me of just fully letting go.
It's interesting. I was recently asked by a business mentor of mine, friend Stu McLaren. He's got a 12-year-old daughter, and he's like, "Man, dude, you should do a thing for kids." And it's not really what I do. I mean, I love kids, and I've had kids, and but so I've been resistant because I have this idea of that I work with people and help them, in their art. But I love that you just work with everybody. How do you work with kids? And I'm selfishly asking, like, how do you, yeah, is you just focus on the play aspect of it, or how do you treat kids if you got a bunch of kids in the room instead of, are you working with the parents or their grown-ups and kids, or?
Well, I don't really work with kids. I mean, I was
Oh, okay.
saying that in my personal life when I'm hanging out with my
Oh,
friends,
I see.
but
Okay.
I have done late night art with kids. Right now, I mean, I'm at this place where I started off doing this as like a high school art teacher connected to AmeriCorps, where I was working in a number of different high schools. And then it became a nightlife event. And then it really became like a community platform. And I was working with, mostly in San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley for a
Hmm.
number of years. And then it shifted into like conferences and then corporate. And so these days, we're doing as many as like 8 or 10 events is like the most we've ever done in 1 month across multiple
Well,
cities. And I have 8 different facilitators. And mostly we work with large
yeah.
tech organizations primarily. We also work with universities and sometimes nonprofits. But back in the day, it was way more of a like exploring doing this with tons of different audiences. And I'm still interested in that. It's just like
Yeah.
I'm way more in the turning late night art into a successful and sustainable business.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it used to be more of I did it from my friend's 12-year-old daughter's birthday party
Yeah.
with like 40 like 9 to 12-year olds from a Montessori school in El Cerrito, the Montessori family school. And it was like I remember this girl's dad who's from Israel, and he was like, there's no way you're gonna like capture the attention of these kids, like they're out of control. And I was like, okay, let's see. And so we had, I think it was 30 kids, super high energy. And then I get them they're doing like blind contour portraits of each other, and the room is like silent and they're all drawing.
Yeah.
And it was actually fascinating. It was like to see how you can actually capture the attention of the kids
Yeah.
with good facilitation and good music and kind of like a fast moving process. And they were super bought into it. So
How you deliver and what you set up the invitation. I've always been a gardener and really into growing food and stuff. And, at my kids' school, we championed this school garden, and, there was so much resistance to it, but and now they're really common. But back then it was just sort of like, why, and it was like, oh my God, this so relates to your teaching and your kids will love it. But anyway, one of the things we did was we got these kids, these elementary kids, out into the garden, and they picked their own lettuce and their tomatoes, and we made salad, and these kids loved it, and they ate all this food that they wouldn't normally eat. And what we got were all these parents saying, Johnny told me he ate salad today and he loved it. Could you tell me what was the dressing or how did you get them to do it? Because all he eats is food that is white, pizza and Wonder Bread or whatever, and it's just like, well, it's because he grew it. It's because he picked it. He got to have his hands in the dirt and there were bugs in the trees and we were joking around and that just reminds me of what you're describing, how like it's the music, it's the setting, it's how you create the container, and that's of course, your artistry. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and for kids and for adults, for all of us, right? I mean, how do you get into the zone? And I think that music is the key. It really is, like, how to create shift the mood and to create an environment that's inviting. Like you said,
Yeah,
have the sharpened pencils ready,
yeah,
like have the white paper wrapped around your dining table, like to be able to make things easy. But I think also being with other people and just building off each other's ideas is a really key part of it for me, of being able to let go and just be in a more free flowing process.
yeah, yeah. I when listening to music and finding music, and I'm always kind of, I'll try different music, and there's definitely music that and I'm just curious how you describe this kind of music, because this is what works for me at workshops. It's like road trip music, or that we're going to a place, or that it's picturesque music. It evokes imagery for me. And I don't know, like, how do you think about the music? I mean, is it just the beat, or like, because definitely there's playlists that seem to drop in better, and I'm just sort of aware of what has room for people to express, but help facilitate what they're doing. Do you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
have you were a DJ to this, but like, how do you talk about what are the adjectives for this music that you're using?
Yes, it's I think you have a good start there around.
Yeah,
I mean,
right?
I have a playlist that's called Art Making, that it has a certain feeling to the whole
Yeah.
all the list. But when I'm curating songs for Late Night Art for the workshops that I'm facilitating, some of the things that I'm thinking about first off are just, I have a lot of international participants, and so
Mm.
have leaders and team members from Uganda and from India and from Turkey, and so really intentionally weaving
Yeah.
in songs from different cultures. And again, it's that thread of how to use art to help people feel seen. So the music, when I was just doing an event for a 350 sales managers from a large organization, and there was one woman there from Nigeria, and she comes up to the stage and she's dancing and she's like, how do you know this song? And like that moment, it just like created such a great energy in the whole entire room, because everyone saw her dancing, and it just had this feeling of like, the ripple of positivity. And
Yeah.
so the music, though, I think it has a huge range, from both like deep kind of reflective instrumental soft,
Hmm.
like helps people's nerves calm, down to then like the ramp up, like really like high energy transition music as they're moving from chair to chair, that kind of shifts, like I said, empties the cup. um,
Hmm.
to then I think like the general music for art making, it's usually instrumental, and it has an evocative,
Yeah.
um, like usually there's a sense of surprise, and I almost always use music that people don't know. So it's people have this interesting feeling like I should use music that, like oftentimes they're thinking about how can you incorporate music that the team likes and these like top 20s songs. And
Yes.
that's
Yes.
for me, that is not my style. It was not my style even as a DJ when I DJ'd weddings, etc. I have a pretty specific taste in music, and I don't really often play music that people know, and I like that. I think it kind of makes people, brings them into a different space,
Yes.
where they're
Yes.
not they're not really sure what's going to happen, and they don't know where the music is going to take them. And so there's a sense of mystery.
I
um,
love that. I mean, we definitely see at workshops where, you put on the music you heard when you were, 18 or 15, and everyone kind of gets into it, but it's about that time, and I love how I'm the same way. I like to just source music. We already had that music, it's like we know that feeling of that. Let's put a new feeling to this experience now. As a DJ, and I mean, how are you sourcing music? Is it just the algorithms and things you're just hunting? How do you go about doing that? Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be more of a traditional DJ. Actually, I had my DJ controller, and I was DJing weddings and events. And then I shifted more into I call myself a music curator. So I collect music, and I've been making playlists since I was 11. I was in the car yesterday on Mother's Day with my mom, and she was pulling out all these CDs that I'd made her
Oh,
for previous Mother's Days,
oh,
um,
wow.
back from when I was in middle school. And so I realized that's also a thread throughout my whole life. And so the music, finding good music is, I saw this sign that said, um, it was like, bless the people who introduce you to new music or something like that.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
and it's because, yeah, there are certain people in my life who I think have been anchors of receiving and exchanging good music, since we were in high school. And then, I think there, yes, to the Discover Weekly on Spotify is great, but I'm like a serious scavenger in terms of like
Yeah.
going lots of different places and down rabbit holes to explore different music. And
Yeah.
so I'm kind of always in that search and collection mode.
I find that because I've traveled probably not as much as you, but I do a lot of traveling for workshops. And I was in Morocco and we were coming back from the Atlas Mountains. And this cab guy, the music he was playing, and I couldn't understand. I kept asking, who's this? Who's this? And I recorded it just on my phone just to like have a source. And I've been able to find what he was playing. But that's where going to these places, walking and just using the apps to like hear it and then find it. That's where I find a lot of really great music is actually going to new places, has new music. And that's pretty a cool resource. But
Yeah, it is true. It's different. Like when I was being in Paris and like walking down the street and listening to French hip hop, and then being in
oh yeah.
London and listening to British hip hop as I was like cruising through London, it just has a whole different quality. And so, yeah, I think it's wonderful to travel and to really like steep in the music of that place.
Yeah, yeah. So coming up, like what are you excited about in terms of where you're going with this? Like what's the dream here? I mean, you're just already so busy. Is it just do you impact more or like I mean, I I can imagine seeing like a question I had around does this work virtually? Do you know what I mean? Like I think it could. I think people can connect. We're connecting. Have you thought about that? What has been your is that something that you've thought about?
Yeah, I mean, February 2020, I had all this,
Oh, yes, of
had like all
course.
this stuff planned, and I had this like a huge event planned in Cambridge, England, and I was planning an event in Brazil, and we had stuff planned in Mexico.
Ah,
And it was like this like lineup of in some ways I was like in the peak
oh,
of
wow.
the peak moment that I'd ever
Yeah.
experienced. And then it all crashed. I thought Late Night Art was gonna die. I really didn't think it could work online. And I was pretty resistant. I actually was like, I don't even want to do this online.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
then I brought in a close friend consultant who was an expert online facilitator. Her name is Lotus Wong, who's somebody who I've been collaborating for the last 6 years. And so she really helped me trial out Late Night Art virtually. We called it Creative Doorway, and we led a series of events. And we realized that you can create magic online
Yeah.
with the arts in just 90 minutes. And so we started leading virtual Late Night Art workshops with our clients, and we built up momentum. And yeah, we did events as big as 300 people online.
Wow.
And yeah, we've now done hundreds of events online. And the way that I work with clients now is usually a mix of in-person and virtual. So we do series of events with clients. And
Oh,
where Late Night Art is at now is going through a huge evolution from being a like one-time event, great, that was fun, team building kind of experience, to becoming a creative partner with organizations where we can actually help create more of a consistent opportunity for team members to connect and learn together, usually in about an hour and a half format, both in person and online. So we come in once a month or once a quarter, and we have these series with have different themes. And so we do we're just we're a lot more integrated into the culture of organizations now. And
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
have we have 8 facilitators, one in Germany, one in the UK, one in the East Coast, one in the Midwest, and 3 in the Bay. And so where I'm at now is we're moving from this like one-time event company into this creative partner around organizational culture and
Wow.
connection. And I'm in the spot of training, up my team who's all over to be able to lead events without me there. And then we're also in this space of renaming the company. So it's kind of Late Nite Art has been a wonderful name for the last 11 years, but
Yeah.
the events do not happen at night, and as I've described, we use art as a vehicle to help people connect, but art isn't the
The
end
thing.
goal. It isn't the
Right.
end goal. Yeah, the end
Yeah.
goal is really about building sustainable long-term connections between employees
Yeah.
in a way that like is super memorable. And so art is the vehicle. But so this is where I'm at right now, and this is kind
Wow.
of where the future is going.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. Like, and it's so late night art. It's too small of a name to talk about actually what you're creating.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, late night art is like it's a being, it has a
Yeah.
feeling to it. And I've been like very, in close relationship with that entity for the last 11 years, like I said. So it's an interesting moment for me to sort of dance with what is the
Yeah.
new, what
Yeah,
is the new,
what's emerging? What's
yeah.
emerging? What I do like about late night art is, and I so relate to it, that gets me excited. It's like it's late at night. Let's just go do this thing.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter. We're just gonna go. No one's around. Like
Yeah.
there's that quality, which I think is in your, this is just a thing. We get to go do this side thing, and it's sneaky, or
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
exception. Yeah.
There's also, I mean, it's like sexy and cool, and there's like
Yeah.
things that happen late at night. It's like exciting.
Uh-huh.
And I think that is been an interesting aspect of our work, where it's like we're doing very high level executive corporate training, but we're making it like interesting and fun and interactive and cool and creative. And
Yeah. Yeah. I was curious, and I know you're kind of going more into organizations, but where what I think or could see is like more on, I mean, have you done work for individuals, like groups of people that are just trying to figure out their life plan, helping people clarify and learn about themselves and where they're going outside of any organization, just like their life brief or whatever, I mean, I think this could be such a power. I know you got enough on your plate, but don't you think? I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I've only done a few trainings that are open to the public. I mean, I used to do a public event every single month, and that was people who are in all aspects of, where they are in their professional and personal journey. And in some ways it was that like, let's drop in and really reflect on
yeah.
a deep theme like death or
Hmm.
renewal or, movement or motion. And so we would have a whole 3.5 hour evening that was dedicated to this theme through the arts, 3-course dinner. And that was a big part of my life. And I kind of that faded away when I got so dedicated to the business
Yeah.
orientation. So I think, yeah, I'm excited to bring that back in some way, because I feel like that was an important aspect of me just rooting in the Bay Area and being able to interface
Yeah.
with a lot of different people and kind
Yes.
of have a space for that, like art making, like in a very cool environment where the people can meet other strangers. Um, yeah, but I'm open and curious about the opportunity of doing trainings or workshops and with public and allowing people to kind of
Yeah.
drop into that space. But
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me, it's
Because,
I'm more interested in doing that in collaboration. Like I love working with other people and kind of combining what I've been doing with what other
yeah.
people are doing. And
Well, maybe we will be able to do something in the future because I know I'm thinking of those listening, like they want to know, like, ooh, how do I drop into this? And one of you say you do this, those monthly drawings, those inspirational leader lesson, like those are amazing. And so for people listening here, as we're kind of wrapping up, like that's a good place for people to get on your list, and whether they're in an organization or not, like they can keep learning and connected to what you're making. Is that the best way?
yeah, I think so. I mean, like I've been doing it for about 1 year and I have a good rhythm and consistency now
Yeah.
doing these illuminated notes of somebody who I find to be really inspiring in this moment. And then really trying to make it very simple where it's just a drawing and then I curate a playlist every month that in some ways is music that can become a soundtrack for art making or for
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
for life. And so I think that's probably the best way for people to connect with me at this
Yeah.
point.
And those drawings, by the way, they are so good. They're great. Just the style of how you're doing them, and they're really beautiful. I
Thank
love them. Yeah. Listen, thanks so much for joining us here. It's just got my wheels turning like crazy. And wow, I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so happy to get to meet you, Nick. Look forward to sitting across and being able for us to create art over a meal together in
I would love that. I would love
Mill
that.
Valley soon. Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys don't forget, hop on over to the show notes, go to art2life.com, click on podcasts, and there is, we'll have, you'll be able to see a lot of his illuminated drawings, just how he sets up this invitation for art making. There's a ton of stuff here for us as creators to use and to understand and to deepen our own practices. So please leave a comment. You guys know that we have that little yellow tab on the website. If you go to the website, podcasts, on the far right, you can ask a question, leave a comment. That'd be awesome. Again, Adam, thanks so much for being here.
So good. Glad to talk to you about all these things from art to life to how can we raise kids in a more creative way. And yeah.
Awesome.